Hello, everyone, and welcome to our latest episode of ESPN Cricinfo Power Play. And you will notice we are together in the same room for the first time in quite a while. My co-host Fidos Munda is here, and welcome to England.
Yeah, thank you. It's been 3 weeks or so. You brought out the sun for about 10 days, so thanks for that. I really enjoyed it. But more than that, South Africa won a World Test Championship. So I was here to cover the very first trophy with the word world in it, because they have won an ICC trophy before, but it's been a fantastic early summer, and I'm sure you're going to have a wonderful rest of the summer as well.
Yes, and we are focusing at the moment on England's tour, well, actually India's tour of England. India are here for 5 T20 internationals followed by 3 ODIs, and a lot riding on this because obviously India have a home World Cup in the 50-over format later this year, and then England will be hosting the T20 World Cup next year. So this is a good gauge for both of these teams ahead of both of these tournaments. India getting a good look at some of the venues that will be host next year, and England having a look at, some players that we spoke with our guest who said she hadn't played against some of these players before. So it's all going to be quite interesting. That guest is Tammy Beaumont, the England opener. And what did you make of our chat with her?
Yeah, I really love talking to Tammy Beaumont. I think she's one of the first women's cricketers that I covered at the 2017 World Cup, which was also here in England. And she's got such a vast range of knowledge. She can really speak on a range of topics, from what's happening on the field, off the field, personally, collectively. And I think our listeners are really going to enjoy this chat. So let's take a listen to what Tammy Beaumont had to say.
Tammy Beaumont, thank you so much for joining us on Power Play.
Thanks for having me on.
First of all, England have just completed a series against West Indies at home, and I guess that's a good starting point in terms of looking forward to the series against India and how things are going. What things do you think you guys picked up from that West Indies series that you can carry forward into hosting India this week?
Yeah, obviously it was a great series. So many kind of standout moments. I think Amy Jones coming back up to open the batting and doing so well, I think breeds a lot of confidence going forwards in the ODIs. And yeah, I just think how clinical we were in the T20s. We'll just be looking to kind of take that forward. But yeah, I think, the fact that so many different people contributed in that series, the likes of Emily Arlott getting her debut, but also player of the match in her second game, Lindsay Smith getting 5 for on ODI debut, I think just shows, the competition for places has just gone through the roof. And, people that are performing in domestic cricket are getting their rewards at international level. And it's great to see. And obviously India potentially a stronger test for us. And that was probably a good start against the West Indies, but got to ramp it up a bit again for this series to take on kind of, one of our closest rivals.
In the ODI format, you reprised that opening partnership with Amy Jones to great effect. A couple of centuries for you there, and massive stand at the top of the order. Can you just talk us through what that was like being reunited? Because you'd been doing it for the Blaze in domestic cricket this season, but it had been quite some years since you had done it internationally.
Yeah, I think looking back, it was always a fun time opening the batter with Amy. I think we have such different strengths, which is why it works quite well. Obviously, she's a lot taller than me, so, hits different lengths in different areas. So we really kind of dovetail each other at times. And yeah, we knew there was a chance when we opened together at the Blaze that it might happen for England. So yeah, it was great to see her have that go. And she's someone I know really well. So I think we bounce off each other quite well. She's very calm and relaxed all the time and just takes everything in her stride. And yeah, I'm a bit more kind of in your face and in the battle maybe, and trying to get us ahead of the game. So it works really well. And yeah, I was really pleased for her in that series.
And Tammy, you've the England team have come through some changes. Obviously, last year's T20 World Cup didn't go as planned, and then the Ashes was disappointing. And things seem to be very different, from the outside. Obviously, regime change usually means there's some kind of shakeup. Can you talk to us about that and just what's it been like, working under a new coach, new captain, new setup? Does it feel different?
Yeah, I think so. I think in a way the transition's been really seamless to Charlotte and Nat. I think that's a real credit to them that they've made it kind of easy. It doesn't feel like completely, uprooting change, which is always obviously scary in any line of work. But also I think, they've just brought a new energy and excitement to the game. And, I think in particular the selections, you can see there's a lot of pressure on scoring runs at the county level and getting that competition for places. And, there's no guarantees anymore. So that kind of jeopardy and pressure has been getting the best out of people, I think. And it's really good to see. And in that regard, I think it was a great start against the West Indies. And obviously there's a lot tougher tests to come with potentially that World Cup in just a few months' time. So yeah, the fielding sessions have gone up a notch in terms of the pressure and the amount of failure that we go through there and having to deal with that. But I think the challenge is a really good thing. And so far, so good. I think pretty much everyone's enjoying it, even though it's tough, taking a lot of enjoyment out of the hard work, really.
Yeah, I'd like to ask you a bit about Nat. I mean, I know I was working with Catherine Silverbrandt during the T20 World Cup when she was quite heavily pregnant and wasn't really enjoying that phase of it. But I'm sure now that the baby's here, they've got a lot else on their mind. Do you think it's changed her? We often talk about fatherhood in cricket and what that does, but I guess motherhood would have a different impact.
Yeah, I think Nat is just a complete natural. She's always been great with kids, and being with her own son is absolutely no different. I think, a lot of us are getting a bit broody watching how good she is with Theo. But yeah, Catherine's doing brilliantly as well, making sure Nat can do everything she needs to do and look after the baby, and then kind of enjoy that time together. And I think the way that Nat's handled it, I think is so typical Nat. She's almost superhuman at times, just to be able to, be a mother and a New England captain and perform at the level that she always has done. I think is just a testament to her character, that she can just always take, anything and everything in her stride. And all of us enjoy the odd cuddle with Theo in and around training and after games. And hopefully that will continue. But I'm sure once he's crawling, she'll need a bit more help and eyes on where he's wandering off to in all these cricket grounds.
I guess he'll have lots of aunties to keep an eye on him in that case. Just on that, I suppose you've been quite heavily involved in the women's health aspect of advising the ECB on their, various policies. And I just wanted to ask you, what are maybe the biggest advances you've seen, over the course of your career in terms of, things like maternity policy, but also, other aspects of women's health in cricket?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the maternity policy is a great place to start. I think when we first got our England contracts kind of a decade ago, it was very much, a legal document thrown in there that, every employee has to have a maternity policy, but it was not specific to cricket whatsoever. I think we were actually supposed to go and work in an office at Lord's for part of our maternity leave, whereas now it's completely different, and almost the provisions that's available for someone A, carrying a baby, but B, their partner carrying the baby, I think is incredibly important. And to be able to feel like you have the option to have children and carry on your career as a professional athlete, I think is really important. And it's something I think we're going to see more and more of. And the ECB were pretty key on getting it into our England contracts pretty quickly, but we've now managed to start getting the county games to look at it as well. And the provision might be slightly different, maybe not quite as extensive at the county level, but it's still better than your average. And I think that's really important. Outside of that, I think getting the initiative for sanitary items in grassroots cricket, I think is really key. I think back to, when I was a teenager, the number of girls that kind of pulled out of cricket because of the feeling like wearing whites while on your period was tough. We've also done things like getting bra fittings, sports bra fittings, and education around that, which I think, again, is something you don't necessarily think about. A lot of us just buy the one that matches your kit or goes quite well, but actually getting that support can be a performance benefit as well. So yeah, it's really interesting, but there's a long way to go, I think, to get women and female athletes in particular looked after with their health in a way that they probably deserve.
Is there one particular area you'd like to see or you think needs the biggest amount of improvement in terms of that?
Yeah, I think it's more just like there just needs to be more research done. I think, there's a lot of kind of rumors around, say in football that, you're more likely to tear an ACL around your period and things like that. But actually, I think at the moment, as far as I'm aware, there's nothing massively conclusive. But actually, I think, that tracking the kind of the menstrual cycle and knowing how your body performs around that and any, safeguards or maybe, better fueling at certain times, I think needs slightly more concrete evidence in a way.
Yeah, Tammy, you speak about those advances being made, and I think what we see, I'm from South Africa, and we kind of see advances being made in the first world, so to speak, cricket, Australia and the ECB. But then a lot of the subcontinent and Africa gets kind of left behind. Have you noticed that? I mean, you just played West Indies. You're obviously very experienced and you've played a lot of cricket. Have you noticed that there's a little bit of a gap, not just in performance or facilities terms, but also in research terms, in kind of how the game is being spoken about? And would you like to almost see that health program extended?
Yeah, I think that'd be amazing if the work that the ECB health group did could help people around the world. And I think, you got to think, how do we get more people into cricket worldwide? And I do think that grassroots and those types of areas are where we're going to lose people a lot of the time. And unfortunately, in some cultures, it's still seen that when you become a teenage girl, teenage woman, you can't do sport. You have to go and maybe help the family or do other things. I don't want to stereotype, but there are places like that. So we've got to kind of break that stigma of, being able to exercise on your period or all of those kind of things. I think, they're tough conversations to have and they're going to take time. But, I think we've got to try and get out there to more and more areas so that, we can keep girls and women in sport, for the best of their health, let alone performance and becoming an international cricketer, more just for health and well-being reasons as much as anything.
Yeah, and when you speak about, those developments that have been made, I think back to the 2017 Women's World Cup, which was in fact the first women's tournament that I covered. Of course, you were the star of the show there. And Tammy, that seemed to change the way that people in England saw and supported and thought about the women's game. We've now got a Women's World Cup happening in India later this year. Already the WPL has changed the way people think about the game. Back home, of course, 2023 reaching the final helped a lot. What do you think playing a home World Cup and then potentially winning a home World Cup can do for the cricketing culture, especially in women's sport?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely massive. I think, like you said, 2017 was a game-changing moment for cricket in this country. It was probably the catalyst for, the development of our domestic professional contracts and getting, more professionals in the country and it being a genuine job and opportunity for more and more girls. And I think you can do the same thing in India. I think that, as you said, the WPL has been amazing at changing that stereotype of women playing sport and more girls, seeing cricket as a career option instead of just a pastime or a hobby. And I mean, we'll be doing everything we can to stop India winning it in India. But the idea of playing a home World Cup, getting people to come and watch is really important. And, should they win it, it would be, an absolute game-changing moment for them.
I guess England have got a T20 World Cup the following year. And you came back into the T20 squad after a couple of years in, I think, the Tour of Ireland it was, and also, New Zealand. You played a couple of T20s there. You're in the squad for this series against India. So how do you sort of see now your T20 international career going? I mean, would you like to be there at the World Cup next year at home?
Yeah, I think probably the previous couple of years, I hadn't overly thought about, that Lord's final and that World Cup here next year. I think it was something that would be a nice to happen, but can't overly get too caught up on it. But no, I think, getting that call up for the West Indies T20 series was a little bit of a surprise, but a really nice surprise, in that regard. And this India series, I think, trying to really enjoy my T20 cricket and try to contribute in any way I can. And I think, once you're back in, you start looking at what's on the horizon, and it'd be amazing to play in a home T20 World Cup. And I think for me, it's just, trying to enjoy that side of T20. I think it's a really fickle game. You have to take risks, and they don't always come off, or you take the right ones and something amazing happens. So for me, I think it's just about, enjoying every opportunity I get these days.
And has the new, I guess, regime made that more wide open door for you now? Because obviously you mentioned before the focus on domestic cricket, so your performances there are really counting for something. You've got a new head coach and also new national selector in Lydia Greenway. So there's a whole new way of looking at this. So are you seeing this as potentially, you know, a fresh start, and why not be there next year at the T20 World Cup?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's obviously been proven that, you know, if you perform at county level, you'll get a go, and then you've just got to, you know, perform where you get the chance. And I think for me, just stripping it back to, you know, contributing to winning the game for your team, and whether that's I'm playing with the Blaze or Welsh Fire or England, I think just doing what the game dictates and it not being, you know, about doing it in any particular way other than, you know, getting the team across the line. And that's something that tends to work pretty well in my brain, is just, you know, play what you see in front of you. And yeah, so far so good.
Tammy, I'd like to ask you a bit about the domestic restructure. I mean, you guys went through a lot of change, and we've seen some differences in the way that I suppose the women's teams are formed. What's that done for the game? Has it had any impact on whether there's more players, more professionalism, just standards raised? What have you seen?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit tough for me to maybe say the biggest impacts. You know, we at the Blaze didn't have a lot of change at all, really. We've been the Blaze for 2 years. Obviously, we're based out of Nottingham, but we are still the Blaze. Our squad was very similar. You know, probably 90% of our squad stayed the same. But we've been really fortunate for the last sort of 3 years to have worked with Nottinghamshire, well, to be part of Nottinghamshire and be treated really well there. And but I think the whole restructure has definitely raised the standard, and certainly feels like each squad's got a lot of depth. You know, there's some people missing out in county cricket that, you know, could have walked into teams a couple of years ago. So I think that's brilliant to see. And I think it will be interesting to see kind of how it develops over the next couple of years. I think there could be a couple of sticking points with, you know, Yorkshire coming in next year and then Glamorgan the year after. You know, there's obviously everyone's been contracted for a certain number of times. So how those two teams recruit and try and, you know, get the depth in their squad, I think will be really interesting and quite difficult, actually. So, you know, we want it to be a really good competition where anyone can beat anyone on their day. So I think there'll be a lot of movement going forward. I think people are starting to put more of a value on their contracts and on what they can do for a team, and they're not scared to move anymore to get those opportunities. So I think, yeah, it's going to be a really interesting couple of years in the domestic setup on who ends up where and who moves, and yeah, which teams kind of maybe rise to the top. I think will be really interesting.
And Tammy, can I just ask you about specifically this series coming up against India? What are you expecting from them as an opposition?
Yeah, I think, you know, it's number 2 versus number 3 in the world going against each other, and they've got a couple of players that really enjoy playing in England. So I think it'll be a really tough tour and series for us, but a really good test and a really good time for that. You know, they keep finding more and more talent. There's a lot of names that I haven't played against before in this squad, and that normally throws out some unexpected challenges. But I think, you know, with the WPL, like, they're just getting so much talent coming through that's just ready to go. So yeah, it's going to be a tough challenge, but a really exciting and probably, as always, there's always a bit of drama with England-India series. So I'm sure there'll be some drama coming forward.
Yeah, Tammy, I'm interested to know, I mean, you play the women's team, and at the same time, your men's team are playing the Indian men's team. And this rivalry seems to, I suppose, I don't want to compare it to the Ashes, but it seems like the next big rivalry. Whenever India play one of the other big 3, I'm just going to include South Africa as part of a big 4 now, and say that also has a little bit of spice and sting to it. What's that like? I mean, have you paid attention to kind of the parallel narratives that can emerge when you've got the men's team and the women's team? You're both playing the same opposition, and there seems to be like quite a lot of vibe around the summer.
Yeah, well, actually, the ECB have added in the men's mixed disability team as well. So they've got a series against India, and they're already 2-0 up. So there's a lot of pressure on us because the men are 1-0 up, the mixed disability team are 2-0 up. So a bit of pressure on the women to you know, start well as well. But I think it's a brilliant initiative. I think looking back to that Ashes in 2023, you know, the men and the women, the way it ebbed and flowed, and both teams were kind of on top, then behind, and the same kind of momentum swinging. And it certainly felt like it was, you know, handing it back to the guys and then them handing it back to us. And hopefully that can happen with all three teams this year, you know, get that kind of momentum going, that real excitement for the fans. And for me, I think the game I'm looking forward to most is the game at Bristol, where, you know, the mixed disability guys are playing before us, and then we'll kind of go afterwards. And I think that's a really exciting thing to do, and I hope we do more of it. Yeah, maybe again South Africa next year or whenever it is, get South Africa over and do a big test series, and yeah, it'd be a pretty cool thing to do, I think.
Yeah, see, she's advocating for schedule changes here.
Don't get me started.
Oh, no, please.
We haven't got long enough.
Well, Tammy, we're really looking forward to what's to come and wish you all the best. Thank you so much for joining us on Power Play.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, that was really great hearing from Tammy Beaumont. I think my favorite part of it was just listening to her talk about the change when you host and win a World Cup. And India, over to you, because it does change things, right? South Africa hosted a T20 World Cup. The women's team got to the final. They didn't win, but still it meant we have a semi-professional domestic structure. More eyeballs are on it. People are interested in the women's game. Of course, India have a WPL, but I think winning a World Cup will change, not just for India. It will change the women's game globally and hopefully will mean a lot more attention on it. So I think she made some really good points on that, and very interesting on women's health.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said, she's got a broad range of knowledge, and she's involved in a lot of different things, her commentary and the women's health sort of advisory role with the ECB, and obviously like her playing role. And I find Tammy's story just so interesting because obviously she has been a class act in the one-day format for so long now. And against West Indies, who recently toured here, she and Amy Jones opened the batting for the first time in a number of years. They'd done it at the Blaze in domestic cricket in the lead-up to that series, which was a bit of a hint, really, because Charlotte Edwards, the head coach, had, I think, you know, sort of said, let's see you doing that domestically with a view to doing it in the one-day internationals against West Indies, and with great success. You know, it started with a 200+ partnership. They both scored centuries left and right. Now, India are going to pose a more stringent test, I think we can safely say, and we do start with the T20 format. Now, Tammy's been on the fringes of that T20 setup for some time now, sort of since the 2022 Ashes in Australia. She had a 2-year absence, came back to play against New Zealand at the start of 2024, and also was on that tour of Ireland toward the end of last year when most of the, all of the first choice T20 players were preparing for the T20 World Cup in the Middle East. So she's sort of been on the fringes there. She's in the squad against West Indies. She's in the squad against India. It'd be really interesting to see, if she gets to go there.
Yeah, especially with the home World Cup in mind. I didn't want to necessarily put it out there, but that would be a great swan song, wouldn't it? A home World Cup. She plays in that tournament, and if she's thinking that maybe she's closer to the end than the beginning, that could be a high point for her, kind of the high water mark. But I do think your squad and the challenge that India pose will be far more interesting. And no disrespect to West Indies, they're not going to be at the ODI World Cup. We covered that. They chased down 100 and plenty in 10 overs, and it still wasn't enough. South Africa have also just been over on the islands playing against West Indies. They actually lost the T20 series to them, so that's not great. But they did beat them in the ODIs. And West Indies don't look like a side that's moving forward. I think that would be fair to say. Hayley Matthews still very much carrying the team. You would have watched all the games. I mean, is there anyone else?
Well, it feels like even more so she's carrying the team now, because we had Stefani Taylor was carrying an injury. So, I mean, you'd bank on her to offer some support, but she was clearly not right and didn't play all of the games. She just sort of played where she could. Kiana Joseph, who we saw, had a devastating impact on England at that T20 World Cup. She didn't quite kick on with that on this tour. She made one score of 50, but otherwise, was struggling a little bit for form there. They do have a couple of up and coming young players, and I know you can sort of say that, and then a long time goes by and you don't know what's going to happen. But I think they were somewhat buoyed by that, because they really do need some young talent coming through. Yeah. But I mean, these are girls that are 19, 20, 21. So they are, quite raw. They're going to take, some time and need more experience. So,
of course, it's difficult to get that when you're not going to World Cup. So I think for them, we've got a real problem situation on our hands. Presumably they'll be here next year at the T20 World Cup. They will have to qualify, but hopefully they're able to do that.
Well, interestingly, their head coach Shane Deets said he was quite welcoming the period that's coming up over sort of the rest of the British summer here. So they're going to go back after the South Africa series. There's not too much going on over the sort of, I think, the July, August, September period. So he was seeing that as a really good long block of getting the team or the squad together and working through a lot of things and trying to, I guess, polish off some of that rawness that the up and coming players have got. Hopefully in the meantime, they get some players, injured back. So obviously Taylor, I think Chanel Henry was back against South Africa. She didn't tour England. And then, potentially Deandra Dotton, perhaps to come back as well.
Well, that's the story around West Indies. But England, I know pressure's on. I mean, pressure's always on England, right? The series against India will be big. Tammy spoke to us about men, women, and the disability team are playing as well, from what she said. So that's one thing. But the focus on the ODI World Cup, I mean, in my book, Australia and India as hosts, it's their tournament to lose. But do you think England feel that they have a chance? A very realistic chance? Obviously, everyone's got a chance.
I think they certainly do. I think we're going to see some more clues perhaps in this series against India because, as we've mentioned, that provides that little bit more of a sterner test. So we'll see where they're really at. They'll certainly, think so themselves. And I guess that the big thing in their favour is they have got this new setup. So they've got obviously Charlotte Edwards as head coach, and she's had great success in the West Indies tour here recently. So again, this is going to be another sort of test of how that relationship is working. On all evidence, is working brilliantly. So we just have to wait and see. But I think we'll know a lot more once this series with India is over.
And I suppose the biggest news from an outside perspective, Sophie Ecclestone's coming back. She's integral, right, especially to the England side and especially in the subcontinent. So what can we expect to see? Is she going to play a dominant role and how much responsibility is on her when it comes to that World Cup?
Yeah, quite a lot. And I think we saw her carrying a lot of responsibility into the last World Cup, the T20 one. And she perhaps didn't need to, in the sense that they sent a 4-pronged spin attack there. So there was support in the spin ranks there. And it's maybe England need to sort of look to those others to take more responsibility. I think we did see some really good signs of that. I mean, Lindsay Smith, the other left arm spinner who had perhaps been a little bit in Sophie Ecclestone's shadow for a number of years, she made a comeback to be selected for the Tour of New Zealand, which preceded that T20 World Cup, and then performed reasonably well at that T20 World Cup. She made her one-day international debut during the West Indies visit, and performed brilliantly. Took a 5 in that tour, and really basically showed that England have got. We knew they had depth in the spin ranks, but they've got someone else there who's quite experienced. She's in her late 20s. Yeah. She's been around a long time. This is her second chance at it, so. She can well and truly, take a role there. They've got Charlie Dean as well, so the off spinner, and this has meant that Sarah Glenn's actually missed out the leg spinner from the.
Yeah, and she was a regular for a while, right?
Exactly, yeah. So they've actually made the call not to go with 4. They've gone with the 3-pronged. So yeah, I mean, Sophie Ecclestone, I mean, she's the higher ranked player, and she only recently lost that number 1 spot in the world rankings, which she'd held for a really long time. So she's an obvious, choice as the leader of that spin attack. But I mean, maybe we're seeing that there are other options there, and that can take any sort of pressure off of her.
Exactly. So we don't know when we'll be sitting in the same room together again, and I think since we are, we should use this opportunity to throw forward to the World Cup a little bit. We've got the 8 teams confirmed. We've got the fixtures confirmed finally, and we know there'll be a lot of games played in Colombo, which I guess in a way gives Sri Lanka a little bit of an advantage, right? They wouldn't have planned for a few home games, and now suddenly they're playing home games in Colombo. Chamaria Tapatu, we know we speak about in similar terms to Hayley Matthews, but I actually think Sri Lanka have got some really good depth. Vishmi Gunaratne's been playing well. They've got very experienced spinners in Karanawira. When you look at, I don't know if we've looked at the fixtures in too much detail. Who do you think has the upper hand at this World Cup?
I think, as you mentioned, I think it's India and Australia's really, to lose. I think India are going to be big threat. Home team. They'll have really been, aiming for this, working toward this for a long time. Obviously, with that it carries pressure, but they've been under pressure to win a World Cup at senior level for some time now. Yeah. So hopefully they've learned the lessons of that and are able to shoulder that pressure. During this series for the T20s, we've got Shafali Varma coming back. So it'd be interesting to see how she goes in the shorter format on her return. But I think, she could well and truly be key. Harmanpreet Kaur, obviously, again, not that India rely on just one player, but she's, really crucial.
And lots of talk about where she'll bat and how she'll lead, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so, again, this can be, a bit of a test of that here in England with, obviously, a step up to be made at the World Cup. So I see India as the favourites there for sure.
Okay, so we got 3, India, Australia and England we've spoken about.
What about South Africa?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I actually think South Africa's going to go through quite a rough patch now. They're under a new coach in Mandla Mashimbi. Doesn't really have experience coaching in women's cricket, has loads of experience coaching in men's cricket. And it hasn't been that easy for them. I mean, to lose in West Indies, it's not great considering, where West Indies are and all the things we've said about the lack of depth, perhaps, in the West Indies side. They also don't have a lot of cricket. So South Africa won't be playing until just before the World Cup. It's winter now at home, so no cricket there. And then they supposedly going to go to Pakistan for 3 ODIs before the World Cup. But of course, with the travel and the logistics and Pakistan playing in Sri Lanka, I'm not sure whether they will actually go to Pakistan. Maybe those games will be in Sri Lanka. They did play a tri-series there, didn't do very well there either. So I think South Africa, we've got a little bit of a problem. When Marizanne Cup doesn't play, everything seems to fall apart. When she's back, things seem to come together. There's a little bit of a batting depth problem from what I can see. And I think they need to look at what to do if a Sune Lees and Chloe Tryon don't come off, which they're also getting older. Their careers are probably also more towards the end than the beginning. So someone like Faye Tunnicliffe, who you might have heard of, she's played a lot of domestic cricket. She doesn't get a lot of opportunities, but she's got to come into the picture at some stage. Of course, South Africa's under-19 side also reached a World Cup final. So there's talent there, which they've got to look at. But my wild card for that number 4 place would be either between Pakistan and Sri Lanka. And my reason for that is that especially Pakistan will be in one place. They'll be playing all their games at one venue. That sounds familiar because the Indian men's team played a Champions Trophy at one venue and went on and won. So inadvertently, maybe this is doing something for Pakistan. They, depth-wise, watching the World Cup qualifiers, they were far and away the standout team of that qualifiers. Even Bangladesh needed a few things to go their way to get there. So I think if you get Fatima Sana, Diana Baig, Muniba Ali, or one of the other top order batters, and then Sadia Iqbal, who's the number 1 ranked spinner in the world, to come good, Pakistan have a really good chance of getting to the semi-finals. And I think that will light up the women's game, to see a team who just in the last FICA report were still professionalizing. They were given quite a low ranking in terms of their professional structure. To get them to a World Cup semi-final would say to the world, hang on a moment, this game really is growing. So I'm really looking forward to the World Cup. I love World Cups, despite a traumatic history at World Cups. But I love them because, they're condensed. This format is great. Everybody plays everybody. I think that's better than groups. And you really get a sense of where teams are at. I don't like a hybrid model, but I suppose it's unavoidable in the circumstances. So I think this World Cup will be really good and really competitive. And I'm really looking forward to what we do in the build-up to it and how much cricket we get to see. And then what we're able to do once we get there, if we get there.
Absolutely. Well, we look forward to bringing you all of the news from the lead up to that and the World Cup itself, which is a long way away. There's obviously a lot of cricket to be played in the meantime, and we will bring you all of the talking points as and when. For the moment, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the next episode of ESPN Cricinfo Power Play.